Welcome back to Encyclopedia.Zone. My name is Dr. Don Jolly. I am the editor-in-chief of the internet's premier home for literary shitposting, Encyclopedia.Zone. Our latest issue, the Quarantine Fun Zone, available now, featuring shitposts, short stories, comics, and poetry, all about the COVID-19 epidemic or about anything other than the COVID-19 epidemic. You can check that out at Encyclopedia.Zone right now for free. Magazine length issue. Really recommend that you do it if you haven't already. Also, I'd like to do a shout out to one of the artists whose comic is featured on the Quarantine Fun Zone update, Mr. Rory Blank at kingofblood.com. I am currently wearing this beautiful love trash, bee trash, raccoon tie-dye shirt that he produces, and you can get one of your very own at kingofblood.com. If you like what we're doing on Encyclopedia.Zone, like what we're doing here on the YouTube channel, you can support us at patreon.com/HRC2020. So, obviously, we're still in the middle of this epidemic, but conditions have changed, and I thought I'd do a little bit of an update on what's going on there. But I'm going to do it in a roundabout kind of way. We're actually going to start many years in the past. See, I have 2 degrees. I have a master's degree and a bachelor's degree, and I'm still paying off the master's. The bachelor's, which was an in-state thing here in Texas, is actually paid off. And so we're going to start talking about the one that I have paid off, the one that is not currently fucking me. My undergraduate degree was in religion and literature with a minor in Jewish studies. I grew up sort of the way I've described it as Daily Show liberal. So I went to a small Catholic university, and one of their requirements was to take a religion course. So I took Intro to the Hebrew Bible, and it was like a key unlocked whole pathways of culture that had been opaque to me up until that point because I didn't have any background in biblical literature. And the new text criticism of the Bible, the new criticism, which is essentially studying the Bible as a literary document, was like a thunderbolt to me. It's one of the profound fascinations of my life, and it's the reason that I ended up going on to get a master's degree in religious studies. And as much as I, talk about having a problem with academia as an institution and with the especially larger schools as institutions, I actually got a very good education from my small Catholic university, and a big part of that was the minor that I got in Jewish studies, which was a new program that they had been doing up to that point, and it was overseen by a rabbi. And like a lot of people who get struck by the lightning bolt of the Bible, I even, toyed with the idea of converting. So I was very close to this rabbi for a number of years. Didn't end up doing it. But there's something that this rabbi said to me while I was pursuing this course of study that has stuck to my ribs ever since. What he said was, everything is political. Even if you don't see it that way, everything is political. And certainly, this was the way that he comported himself. Very intelligent guy, a lot of interesting things to say, about Israel, which is kind of maybe the moment where we had our frisson. But this idea of everything being political is something that when I was in my undergraduate degree, this would be like 2009, the first Obama term was basically when I got my undergraduate degree. Politics, as I understood it then, was essentially about how you position yourself in relationship to power. And the point of view of this rabbi, and the reason that he said it, is that, from the perspective of a minority community, especially a religious minority community, a lot of your life depends on how you position yourself in relation to the power bases around you. So it made sense from his perspective. But, at the time, not being a Jewish fellow myself, and being, being privileged, quote unquote, as a white man in America, I was pretty confident in my assertion that politics was downstream from culture. I actually heard a guy on MChat, on the Encyclopedia Zone chat box, was talking to a DJ recently who said that politics is downstream from culture, but culture is downstream from vibes. Excuse me. So, maybe that's true. But my perspective, at least back when I was getting my undergraduate degree, was that politics was essentially of the here and now. It was a material thing. It was related to the material world, and that there were certain, or that it was native to the material world and native to a very small window of temporal existence. That politics was about sort of day-to-day struggles. And my contention was that culture actually framed the larger conversations in which these day-to-day struggles for power took place. And so politics was downstream from culture. As we rushed towards the clarifying disaster of 2016, however, I began to see politics differently. By this time, I'd left my undergraduate degree. In 2012, I went to New York to get my master's in religious studies. And in graduate school, talking to people, from New York, people that had transplanted to New York from all over the country, all over the world, as a matter of fact, I began to see that politics was becoming the primary mode of all expression and, more importantly, all consumption. Over the last decade, talking about political polarization has become, it's very commonplace. Everybody can see it happening. And one of the primary places you can see it happening is in consumer culture, because that is the culture that we all occupy, whether we want to or not. There's conservative chicken places like Chick-fil-A. There's liberal-aligned coffee chains like Starbucks. And I'm not using these political designations in any kind of serious way. I'm just saying that it's part of the presentation. You want to present yourself as a conscientious, liberal driver, then get a hybrid car. You want to send the exact opposite message, get a Hummer 2 or a giant SUV or something like that. Or, do the fascinating cultural move of blowing coal, removing parts of your muffler apparatus so that you peel out with these gigantic spumes of toxic gas as a fuck you to people that are basing their personal narratives on climate change. So in New York, as time went on, like I started off kind of flush because I had all this graduate school, loan money, and then things degraded until I was living in a warehouse with no bathroom. And one of the main problems that you have when you're in New York is finding a working toilet. If you're a pedestrian, it's very hard to find a public toilet. If you get stuck somewhere where no toilet makes itself accessible, you can have a very bad day. On a long subway ride, God help you. And so I started to see, like, as we passed through 2016, as we got, deeper into the Trump administration, it became very important for people to signal their opposition to, quote unquote, resist. And so you'd see things like all-gender restroom signs start to appear with greater frequency around the city. But very often those all-gender restroom signs were right next to a sign that said restroom for paying customers only. Or you'd see in the window of a bar that serves $18 cocktails, refugees welcome here, presumably if they have the $18 for the cocktail. So, this sort of political signaling, and people talk about virtue signaling as if it's something that's like exclusive to the sort of nominal, superficial left. But, these sorts of signals are the primary mode of our political expression. And it has occurred to me that the primary frisson in American life, this is what living in New York taught me, is not the frisson between the right and the left or the Democrats and the Republicans, because both of those are essentially about adopting different strategies of signaling within consumer culture. Once again, you want to signal your alliance with the quote-unquote right wing. There are certain consumer behaviors that you would engage in. You want to do the same for the left wing. There's another brace of consumer behaviors. The true frisson in American culture, I believe, is the division between the damned and doomed. The damned being defined as those who have accepted the terms and worked within the system of American corporatism to a sufficient degree to provide for their material needs, and the doomed being those who are either unwilling or unable to do this. And I believe that politics, in the way that I'm talking about it, this sort of signal-based group identification politics, is primarily a series of shibboleths employed by the damned. The doomed do not really have time to do so, do not have the resources to do so, because the doomed live only from small cash infusion to small cash infusion. And whether that's, trying to make rent, or there are levels of survival that people are prepared to accept that are actually a lot lower than rent. There are things you can do in lieu of rent. There are situations that you can find yourself in where, like, maybe the amount of money that you're trying to get is $10 to score by the end of the day. And scoring whatever amount of cash is going to get you to that next stage is the primary occupation and the sole survival mechanism of the doomed. So, yeah, I'm doing a lot better now. I've, at least until the COVID-19 epidemic kicked up, I got a shitty little job. I got some photo identification. I bought into American society to a sufficient degree to at least provide myself with a comfortable existence so that I can work on Encyclopedia Zone and put out issues like the Quarantine Fun Zone update, do my HTML pages, do my writing, talk to artists and other shit posters, and, have a good time. And the exchange that I do for that is I have a shitty part-time job, or I had a shitty part-time job. Now, earlier this week, the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, ordered the state to start reopening. Technically, the provisions are that movie theaters, restaurants, a lot of the businesses that have been heretofore closed are allowed to open. They are allowed to open. They are not required to open, but we'll get to that. As long as they serve 25% of their standard capacity. So, whatever the fire marshal says their maximum occupancy is, you can do 25% of that, with the theory being that because less people are going to be involved, they'll be able to practice social distancing and et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going into work on Friday. The day after this video will go up, I am going to go report for a shift. I'm going to log my hours, and I'm going to get my tiny amount of money, which will allow me to sustain my existence. So there's a weird situation, though, because in Austin, the city that I live in, we are under shelter-in-place orders until May 8th. According to the governor, his order, which allows businesses to open should they be so inclined, countermands all local orders. So I'm being told two different things by the governments that I live under. According to the city, it's not safe to go outside. The air is toxic, got to flatten the curve, et cetera, et cetera. According to the government of the state that I'm in, it is safe to go outside. We've just got to put certain restrictions down on local business. So as much as I'm doing better than I was in New York when I was living in a, warehouse, I am still part of the doomed. I don't really have any savings to speak of. I'm subsisting paycheck to paycheck. And so now that the restaurant that I work in, because I work in the restaurant business, is allowed to be open, a couple of things have happened. And this is why, that allowed is a little bit tenuous. First off, because these businesses are now no longer shuttered by government mandate, because they can technically be open, small businesses and stuff like that cannot apply for loans to sustain themselves through the epidemic to the state of Texas, because now it is their, they have the liberty to make the decision to stay closed, but the state is freed from the onus of supporting them should they elect to do so. Likewise, many people, like every state in the union, the unemployment rolls in Texas have exploded as a result of the COVID-19 epidemic. And because now those businesses that have left people furloughed or unemployed are allowed to be open, those people that, were made unemployed by the COVID-19 epidemic are now technically allowed to work. And so they should be off of the unemployment rolls. So while like a lot of things that are related to modern American conservatism, Greg Abbott's order is sort of cloaked in the language of liberty. And you see that, even Elon Musk is doing it now, talking about how we need to free people from the the COVID-19 quarantine restrictions. And there are serious concerns with personal freedom and liberty that are related to the epidemic, but I don't think they are a primary part of Abbott's decision making here, because technically these places are free to open. The government is not mandating them closed, and this removes the government's responsibility for taking care of either the employees or the employers that elect to remain closed during this quarantine. Although, of course, there's mixed messages coming from, once again, the state and municipal governments in that regard. So, as a doomed person, as a person who persists from paycheck to paycheck with a little bit of help from my Patreon supporters, and thanks very much to all of them, seriously, thank you, I don't really have a choice. I mean, I couldn't apply to unemployment in the first place because technically I work for a staffing company. So while I have been furloughed from the place where I actually work, the staffing company that technically employs me is, I'm not technically furloughed. I'm still on their roll, so I can't apply for unemployment, which has been a nice, nice little fuck-a-doodle-doo for me. But I really got no choice. And the place where I work really has no choice. Now that it is an option for them to open and make even a tiny amount of money, they've got to do it. And now that it's an option for me to return to work and get my tiny amount of money, I feel compelled to do so. But it brings me back to what that rabbi told me when I was, doing my undergraduate degree. It feels like a political act. Going to work. In fact, going outside has become a political action in the way that American politics is constituted, which is, once again, I think primarily about sending signals of group identity. And if you want to signal that you're in with the quote-unquote conservatives or the Republicans or the quote-unquote right wing, you make noise like you're in favor of personal liberty. Personal liberty is their justification for the way that they live their lives. If you want to signal your alliance with the political left, quote-unquote, the Democrats, the mainstream corporatist left, you signal that you are in favor of empathy, that this is your empathy and understanding are your primary motivating forces. But these are all signals that exist within the larger system of consumer capitalism. And I'm not saying that I'm going a little pink on you. I'm going a little red. I wouldn't go that far. But what I am saying is that the way that we instantiate politics and the way that everything has truly become political is primarily that everything has become part of this system of signaling. You have to signal your alliance with one group or another group because there's so much antipathy between the two, and the combat between the two has become our primary motivating cultural and religious force. It's the way that America defines itself in the 21st century. And ultimately, it's very superficial because whether you're, doing what you're doing for liberty or whether you're doing what you're doing for empathy and understanding, your behaviors are pretty much the same. You're engaging in a consumerist society, and you're primarily signaling your political alliances by engaging in consumer behavior. So it's very strange to me that it's like when this started off, around the time of the Obama administration, I mean, there was a lot of political polarization even under Bush, but as this polarization sort of got more and more insidious and more universal, it became, it's gotten so widespread that now even like on Friday, I'm going to get up early. I'm going to, get on my bicycle and I'm going to go to work. I'm going to go outside. And that feels like some kind of political calculation. Am I defying the order of my municipality? Am I approving of Greg Abbott's opening of the state? Am I giving some kind of sanction to this free America narrative? These are all academic concerns. Because once again, the actual political frisson is between the damned and the doomed, those that sort of agree with this larger American corporatist consumer system that we're all, not agree with, but those that cooperate with this larger corporatist system that we're all enmeshed in. and justify that cooperation by their political allegiance. Or you're in with the doomed, which is where I am, and I don't really have the luxury. You know, I can understand that what I'm doing when I go off to my shift, when I step outside with my mask on, what I'm doing can be construed as a political act, but I don't really have the luxury of seeing it that way, because certainly there's no support coming from my government on the municipal level, the state level, or the national level. For me, it's a question of basic survival, just as it's a question of basic survival when that junkie on Herkimer Place starts his daily hustle for $10 so that he can score. I've got to get my fucking rent money. I've got to get my Triscuit money. I've got to get my fucking Dr. B money. And I've got to provide myself with the material conditions that I need to do the work that I find actually valuable, but which is not particularly profitable for me. So it's weird that I feel like I'm engaging sort of against my will in this political discussion. Some people fantasize about getting a good car or buying a home, but personally, I'm hoping that someday I can afford to see all my actions as political, and I can triangulate my actions according to these sort of in-group considerations that, you know, I think a lot of people in the damned class take into account before they act. But like the rest of the doomed, I don't have the time, and I especially don't have the money. Politics has become pervasive and universal, but it's also become a luxury. It's become the basic signal of economic, not even like economic success, but it's become the signal of economic comfort. It's become the signal of economic solvency, is the luxury of being able to engage in political thought. And it's sad that politics is, I don't think it is anymore about your relationship with power. I think it's about power's relationship with you and how you choose to interpret it, and how you choose to narrativize it. So, yeah, looking forward to getting back to work. I hope I don't get a lung infection and end up in the hospital. Anyway, that's about all for today. We're going to have more for you at encyclopedia.zone next week. Very exciting stuff coming up. I'm really excited for you guys to see the next issue. And, you know, it's been a little bit of a wait between issues, but it's going to be much shorter wait this time around. So start getting hyped, zonies and zonettes, and I will see you very, very soon. Here's some of our Patreon supporters. Thanks for joining us today.